Hi, Nick here, and today I want to talk to you about using a capo for your guitar. So most often this is done with acoustic guitars, a lot of times by singer-songwriter types or also by fingerstyle players. So I have my acoustic here, but of course you can also use a capo on electric guitars as well. Now there are a lot of different types of capos out there. You know, back in the day that used to be a sort of a rubber dowel rod with a piece of elastic around it, and those didn't tend to work too well. Today you can find a lot of sort of mechanical capos like this, or it's got a little lever that'll hold your capo in place, and there are also spring-loaded ones as well, and these tend to work pretty good. They're reasonably priced, so you know, if you're looking for something to spice up your playing, capos are a great, relatively inexpensive thing that you can add to your guitar. So there are different reasons why you might want to capo. The most common one is for singers who are singing and playing that they want to change the key and still use open position chords. So, you know, you can play down here with these shapes. And then you put a capo on. It's an easy way to do a key change. The chords are going to look the same. Of course, you can play chords all across the neck without a capo, but it's really nice to use these sort of open position voicings. They sound very sonorous, they're easy to play, and it also allows you to kind of do some things if you're into finger picking that you wouldn't be able to do without a capo. So let me go ahead and show you a few things about using a capo that may come in helpful. The first thing is when you place it, you generally, you know, like when you're fretting a note with your hand, with your fingers, you want the capo to be right behind but not on the fret. So here I'm going to do a capo at the second fret. It's right behind but not on the fret. And if you have a spring-loaded capo, it's just going to apply the same amount of pressure. This is a Shubb capo, and as you can see, it's got a little thumb screw here that makes it adjustable, and it can apply different amounts of pressure. And you may find that the capo needs slightly different amounts of pressure depending on where you put it on the neck. So down low might need a little bit more pressure. Up high, maybe a little less. And depending on the action on your guitar, sometimes if it's really tight, it'll make the strings go a little sharp. So one thing to be careful of is when you put the capo on, you may want to double check. If you have a clip-on tuner on your guitar, it will still work. So right now I have a capo on the 5th fret. The 6th string note here should be A. Okay, well actually I'm tuned down a half step, so it's going to be G sharp. And I can kind of go through. You can still tune the guitar with the capo on, you know, even though there's this part that's not sounding out. Now, since the capo adds pressure when you tune, sometimes it may be a little loose or a little tight back here and a little loose here. So what you might want to do when you're tuning with the capo on is sort of give the strings a little tug like that, and then you can check again. That's a good way to tune with the capo on. So you don't always have to do this, and especially, you know, if you're a singer-songwriter and you just want to go through a bunch of songs, you know, usually it's not going to make a huge difference, but depending on the way your guitar is set up, it may be helpful to tune as well as making sure you have the right tension on your capo if it has an adjustable tension. So anyway, let me talk about a couple different types of capos. As I said, there is this kind of capo. This is a Shubb capo. I like to use these because they give you a really good grip. and usually I'm not having to change around to different positions a lot. So I find it pretty, easy to adjust these, but you do want to fool with a thumb screw a little bit sometimes to make sure you have the right amount of tension. I mean, it pops on really easily, as you can see here. Not too hard to put it on. It can be a little bit finicky if you're trying to move it around a lot. So for like a singer-songwriter who's going to be capoing at different frets and uses a capo a whole lot, it might be good to use a sort of spring-loaded capo like a Kyser. And I don't have one because, like I say, I use the Shubbs. But basically, they have kind of a spring grip where you can, loosen it and then move it around. You let go, and the spring just clamps into place. So it's really easy to move around those kind of capos on your neck if you're going to be switching positions a lot. But like I say, I like these Shubb capos, and I think they give you a pretty good grip. Let's see, what else can we say about capos? Some other tricks of the trade maybe. One of them is that if you're having trouble, sometimes capos, depending on how they are, may have a little bit of trouble getting a good clamp on the first string note. So what you'll see some people do is take the capo and turn it upside down. So instead of going on like this, you turn it upside down, and it still does the same thing. It covers all 6 strings. All right, and sometimes you can maybe get a little bit better sound when you do that. It may, if you have a little bit of a buzz, like especially on your first string, it may help to turn the capo over. In addition to that, especially for people that play like 12 strings, I've seen people use 2 capos. If you have a second one, you can put it on behind the capo. And again, because this will add a lot of clamping pressure on your guitar, you may have to check the tuning. Now with 2 capos on, that may be a little bit trickier than with 1 to get it to tune. But the idea is that you don't have to hold adjust either of the capos quite as tightly because there's 2 of them. All right, so that may help you get a better tone from your capo. And again, capos aren't that expensive, so to get 2 of them like this, not a big problem. Note with this 2 capo method that you have one that's sort of on the right way with a clamp like this, and the other with the clamp going up. That's typically how you do it. So that makes sure that you have, your first string, your 6th string are the ones that tend to be a little loose with the capo sometimes. So that way you have both of them clamped down pretty good. Okay, something else to be mindful of when you're using a capo is that the chords will change. The shapes you use may be the same, but it's going to be a different chord that you're actually playing. And to add confusion to that, people will call it out both by the shape as if you were in the open position and the actual chord that you're playing. So for example, without the capo in the open position, we have a C chord, G chord shape, and an F chord, right? You can play like that. So if we put a capo on the 4th fret, we get, with this C shape, it's actually an E chord. The G shape gives us a B chord, and the F shape gives us an A chord. And you'll hear people call it out both ways sometimes, like, oh yeah, capo on the 4th fret, you play C, G, and F. But what you're actually playing is E, B, and A. So adds a little bit of confusion. You need to know the names of the notes on the neck and be familiar with maybe different bar chords, the cage system, whatever, so that if you're playing with other musicians who aren't playing guitar, like a piano player, the bass player is not using a capo, you can tell them what the real chords are. And you also need to kind of be aware that if you play with a singer-songwriter or someone that doesn't know all of the notes all over the neck, they may just call the chords out like, well, I have a capo on the 4th fret, it's C, G, and F, because that's what it looks like in the open position. So anyway, that's something to be aware of when you're playing with the capo and playing with other people. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed this video on using capos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Another thing about capos is that they have partial capos, which means that it doesn't cover all of the strings, and that's what this is here. Okay, so I have this 5-string capo here. It's only going to cover 5 of the strings. It's not, when I put it on the 2nd fret here, it's going to cover everything but the 6th string. So what you end up with is something like drop D, but it's a little different because when you play other chord voicings, you don't have to move your finger up, right?